Good evening, everyone. Hi. I'm Bethany Jean Clement, the arts editor of The Stranger. Thank you so much for being here. Founded in 2003, the Stranger Genius Awards has thus far conferred the title of genius on 56 Seattle artists and arts organizations. These 56 geniuses each got a bag of no strings attached cash in the amount of $5,000. I'd like to humbly point out that this amounts to more than $250,000 shoved into the pockets of local artists by a newspaper. It is incredible, and the art staff and the whole staff of the paper is incredibly proud and happy to be a part of it. This summer, we served up a fresh batch of 25 Genius Award nominees. We've spent the last month of Wednesday nights honoring them and exploring what's between their ears and having a drink with them afterward at Vito's. Please join us for the after party. It's really fun. Tonight, we peer into the minds of the performance nominees. Thanks so much for being here. And to all the past Genius winners in the house, thank you so much for being here to help us figure out which of tonight's immensely talented shortlisters will receive the 2014 Genius Grant in the Performance category. Special thanks to our extremely gracious host, the Frye Art Museum. We're so happy to be here. And thanks to the donors who have adopted the Genius Awards signature wine, Genius Juice, as their beverage of choice, turning booze into art. If you want to join that club, email genius@thestranger.com. Other Genius sponsors include Alaska Airlines Visa Signature Card, Amazon Author Grants, Microsoft Research Group, and the Space Needle. The 12th Annual Genius Awards will be at the Moore Theater on October 18th. It's free, but you have to reserve a seat, and it's filling up fast. Register at thestranger.com/genius. We'll see you there. And now, theater editor Brendan Kiley will take us on tonight's tour of genius.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brendan. Thanks. I haven't even done anything yet. A little bit of a scratchy throat, so I hope you bear with me. But it is truly my honor to be here tonight with all of you and to be talking to a group of really remarkable artists this evening. They do very different kinds of things. They're in very different stages of their careers. But one thing that unites them is that they are truly, truly impressive and geniuses each in their own way. So first up tonight, we'll be speaking with Valerie Curtis New. Clap early, clap often. I like the way you guys are This Connecticut native came to Seattle in the early 1990s, and she slowly began to remake the way we think about theater in Seattle, both with her work as a professor of theater at the University of Washington and as a working director. And she's worked at all kinds of houses across the city, including Intiman, ACT, Seattle Public Theater, the Ethnic Cultural Theater, and also around the country, the Mark Taper Forum, the Actors Theater of Louisville, Southern Repertory Theater in New Orleans, Louisiana. She, in some circles, can sometimes have a reputation as a bit of a bomb thrower, but I think that her more lasting and valuable reputation is that of a conversation starter. And the conversations that she starts tend to be very deep and very meaningful, not always comfortable, but meaningful for all those involved. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Director Valerie Curtis New.
Good evening. We can have a little bit of black church up in here. Good evening. It's a real honor to be here, and I never would have guessed in a million years that I would be nominated for a Stranger Genius. But here I am, And so the task tonight is to figure out how to let you all into my head, how to let you know a bit more about me and my work. So we'll start with the first question, which is, what is my work? I'm a director. And what that means is that I make sure that the work of all the other artists in the process meets the audience with maximum potency. I make sure everyone is inspired and supported in doing their best work, and that we're all moving towards a goal of landing whatever it is we're working on with an audience, to bring it back to a community. Why do I do my work? I'll start with a couple quotes from some writers that continue to inspire me. Alice Childress put it this way. She said, "I continue to create because it is a labor of love and also an act of defiance, a way to light a candle in a gale wind." Arthur Miller wrote, "I regard the theater as a serious business, one that makes or should make man more human, which is to say, less alone." And the Hansberry Project's namesake, Lorraine Hansberry, wrote, "I want to reach a little closer to the world, which is to say people, and see if we can share some illuminations together about each other." So me, I make work because I want to share illuminations with the world, one audience at a time, because I want to feel less alone, and because I'm called to light candles. I'm an artist committed to the idea that art should do something in the world to connect us. I believe that to achieve this goal, the work must be relevant to the lives of people. It must ask fundamental questions about our humanity and the values we uphold in its service. It must invite response. Go ahead. From and within its audiences. And it should do all of these things artfully and with joy. So the big thing I would like you to know about me is that whether I'm making a piece, directing a play, organizing a community event, or mentoring emerging artists, my goal always remains the same. It's to connect people across difference, all kinds of difference, by telling good stories and creating a space for discourse. And I, for one, am ready to do this by any means necessary. I have some images which I'm going to share with you in a second, but first, sort of paying homage to my Facebook addiction. Quickly, here are 13 things you might not know about me. 1, I love the water. I'm a water girl. I didn't know it until I moved here, but I'm a water girl. 2, I was an insurance underwriter in a previous life. That is not a lie. That is true. 3, I can't stand visual noise or the random crooked picture frame. 3, my favorite food, comfort food, is chili, though mac and cheese is a close second. I am in awe of people who make something from nothing. 6, I knew my great-great-grandmother and was until I was 12, and there were 5 living generations on my maternal line. I love golf because I get to practice the thing I love to see actors do, which is to find the present moment and be present in it. 8, I used to walk and talk in my sleep. 9, I still have a random piece of metal that I found on a walk when I was in the 3rd grade. 10, in the 1980s, I was a protester marching against violence against women and nuclear armament. They got pictures of me, like, sign. 11, I have the word courage tattooed inside my right arm and the word wisdom inside my left. 12, I try to find the fear in the room. It's always there. It's always an obstacle to moving forward. And when I'm stuck, I know that I must have missed it somewhere. And 13, I'm hungry to find out what will come next for me artistically. There is a next chapter in the wind, and I can't wait to read it. So, here are some images of me and my work. A lot of the productions that I make are equity productions, and so I don't have moving images. I've got still images of a bunch of my work, and you'll also see some random pictures of me at various stages. So here are some images of me among the exceptional words of my friend, the late Sekou Sundiata.
Nia imani kuja jaka lea. Here's to the best words in the right place at the perfect time, to the human mind blown up and refined, to long conversations and the philosophical ramifications of a beautiful day, to the 12 steppers at the 13th step, may they never forget the first step, to the increase, to the decrease, to the do, to the do, to the did, to the did, to the do, to the did, to the done, to the lonely, to the brokenhearted, to the new blue haiku. Here's to all or nothing at all. Here's to the sick and the shut in. Here's to the was you been, to the is you in, to what's deep and deep, to what's down and down, to the lost and the blind and the almost found. To the crazy, the lazy, the bored, the ignored, the beginners, the sinners, the losers, the winners, to the smooth and the cool, and even to the fools. Here's to your ex-best friend. To the rule benders and the repeat offenders. To the lovers and the troublers, the engaging, the enraging, to the healers and the feelers and the fixers and the tricksters, to a star falling through a dream, to a dream when you know what it means. To the bottom, to the root, to the base, boom, to the drum. Here's to the was you been, to the is you in, to what's deep and deep, to what's down and down, to the lost and the blind and the almost found. Here's to somebody within the sound of your voice this morning. Here's to somebody who can't be within the sound of your voice tonight. To a low cholesterol pig sandwich smothered in swine without the pork. To a light buzz in your head and a soundtrack in your mind going on and on and on and on and on like a good time. Here's to promises that break by themselves. Here's to the breaks with great promise. To people who don't wait in the car when you tell them to wait in the car. Here's to what you forgot and who you forgot. Here's to the unforgettable. Here's to the was you been, to the is you in, to what's deep and deep, to what's down and down, to the lost and the blind and the almost found. Here's to the hip-hoppers, the don't-stoppers, heads nodding in the digital glow of their beloved studios. To the incredible, indelible impressions made by the gazes you gaze in the faces of strangers. To yourself you ask, could this be God straight up? Or is it a mask? Here's to the tribe of the hyper-cyber, tripping at the virtual most outpost, at the edge, on the tip, believing that what they hear is the mothership drawing near. Here's to the was you been, to the is you in, to what's deep and deep, to what's down and down, to the lost and the blind and the almost found.
It's a small room.
Good. It is a small room. Thank you for that, Valerie. I wanted to start by asking, you have directed a lot of productions that have been very well received. There are All My Sons, There's Trouble in Mind, you worked with David Lander Smith, Yellow Man, The Lady with All the Answers to that. I'm wondering if there's a production that sticks out to you as a particular high watermark in your career as a director, and what about it made it better?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that my work made a turn with All My Sons. I really feel, I just had my 55th birthday. And I actually think I'm maybe directing the best ever right now. I'm feeling like I see inside the play, and I'm less wound up and crazy, and so it enables me to make other people less crazy in the process, and as a result, the work is better.
Is that true? That the work is better if you make people less crazy? I don't think all directors subscribe to that.
I learned it when I was young. I was a terror. Oh my God! I just knew that deep down inside, every actor was trying to sabotage my play. And so I just would yell at them and assume that yelling would make it better. And then one day someone said to me, well, what if you just had a moment where you contemplated the fact that perhaps they're doing the best they can? And then it suddenly occurred to me that maybe the job wasn't to to beat them, although sometimes that's still necessary. It wasn't so much to beat them, but to actually try to find the way in that each actor or that each designer needs, where they need my voice, where they need my support to lift them to the next place. And so if I could be less crazy and more clear about where we're going, and I can be less muddled and confused about how to articulate it, then everybody in the process has a shot at doing their best work. And so, yeah, a little less crazy from me seemed to yield less crazy from them. I set the tone.
And so what's that high watermark production for you? Does it come after this turn?
I think that Trouble in Mind.
Trouble-minded is
Because I think we made something beautiful, and that it landed in a powerful way with its audience. And that Alice Childress wrote it, and that we were able to bring her out of the darkness into the light for a contemporary audience, and that we did it, performed it between the George Zimmerman acquittal and MLK's the 50th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech. And we got to have conversations with audiences about race in a way that was organic.
Not always easy. You had some pretty electric conversations.
We did, yeah. There was one day where we had a guy who told us that, that lynching was a lie, that lynching never happened.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
What was beautiful is I didn't have to say anything. Is that there was enough history in the room that people were able to just call the lie what it was. That there was just enough honesty craved in that moment that people just stood up and said, that's just not true. Which in Seattle, sometimes we don't do that. And hope that it ends soon.
Which brings me to another question. Unless you want to talk about Trouble a little more.
I do think it was maybe the best thing I've ever made. And I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud of what it did. Not just what we made, but what it did. Because as I said in my talk, I'm interested in what my work does in the world. And sometimes the quietest, most subtle, most traditional, most, clear and honest thing resonates the loudest. And I think that for me, it was that moment.
What do you think it was about that particular production at that particular moment that did that work? Because it was a historical, contextual moment, as you mentioned, it was important. But
Yeah.
there was, I think, something about the play, but also something about the reproduction of that play. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the nuts and bolts had that effect.
It was magic. There was a kind of alchemy about it, that just all the right elements were in place. I had already done a show with the Intimate Summer Festival, so I knew how it worked. I had relationships with these designers, and they knew how I worked, and I knew how they worked. We had a script that it's just genius, and you didn't see that. I really encourage you to read this play. Childress is masterful and deserves to be in the pantheon of American playwrights. So we had a perfect script, and we had the right people, all with the right attitude. There was no ego in it at all. We just recognized that it was going to be a thing bigger than all of us, and so there was no ego in the process. And everybody got to be surprised by how good we could be. We were better than we knew we could be.
Getting back to that smiling and nodding, and Seattle talks about race sometimes. I think the last time I saw you on stage was at Seattle, and it was a discussion about the Mikado, the Seattle Gilbert Sullivan production, Society's production, and an editorial in the Seattle Times that said it was a yellow-faced production, which kicked off a long and fraught at times conversation about race, about casting, about audiences, about artists, about administrators in the city. And one of the things you said towards the end of that discussion at the Red that I thought was one of the most interesting things said was that I don't ever want to have to be up here on the stage having this conversation again.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit Even though you explicitly said, I wonder if you do me a favor.
So something else I said, which for me was the most important moment of that talk, was I said that whenever we're involved in this conversation, that I am problematized by the fact that somehow I represent what is the problem for the white people. That I call the fact that there are no people of color on any of the artistic staffs in town who have a vote in what goes on the stage. When I say that, then I'm the problem. Like if I didn't say it, the problem wouldn't exist. You know, so I'm tired of being the problem. I want other people to acknowledge it's their problem. And that would not be people of color. You know, it's not going to get fixed by us. And so I'm excited that white people are interested in having the conversation amongst themselves about what we're going to do about racism. So the next panel, you know, we tried to do it in conjunction with Trouble in Mind, is we invited producers to come, and we, instead of a bunch of people of color getting up and saying, oh, it's so difficult to be blank, we invited producers to come and ask the question, why don't you make more diverse work? What are the obstacles to inclusivity? Like, why is it what it is, and why is it okay with you that it is that way? That's the conversation. I would pay to come to see that conversation.
Do you think we might be on the brink of having that conversation? I only ask because it seems like this summer in Seattle, there's been an unusual amount of public conversation about race in the theater community
Yes.
in a Seattle Times high-profile kind of way,
Yes.
which makes me wonder if we might be on the brink of some kind of breakthrough, or maybe not. Maybe that's where
You know, I'm a person of faith, Brent. I'm a person of faith. I'm going to hold out there the possibility that people are interested really in making change. But I don't want to be up here again having this conversation.
Fair enough. We hear a lot, I think, in the general public about actors and what the actor's process is, and what they do to get ready in a nuts and bolts kind of way, and work their way through the role. I think people generally perceive directors as kind of big brains in the background that are helping make everything happen, but don't understand that much about what a director's process is. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, and not just in a generic way, but about your process specifically that helps you make the work that you do.
The key for me is actually being able to identify what the heart of the piece is. What is it that we're trying to communicate? And how can I find language as someone who facilitates all the communication work? How can I find language that lights people up and is going to light them up long enough to get to the end of the process? So with Trouble in Mind, for example, I said to the designers, our first meeting, you know, I want to make this play that's about when we drop the mask and get real. And so then we had conversations about what's the mask and what's real. And we decided that the mask was romantic, vibrant colors at the beginning. And then we got down to the nitty-gritty of black, white, and gray towards the end of the play. And now the lighting design then does that. The lighting design has these rich colors that then are drained away as the play worked. We moved from sort of a full stage to something more empty. The clothes in the first act were all, you know, really vibrant colors, and then in the second act it was all muted and gray and white, and dropping the mask, the language gets harsher and harsher. I could have that conversation with the actor. What is in this moment? This is your moment to get real. This is your moment to get real. We're all having the same language. So if I can find the heart of the play, and I can find the words, the spine of it, a way to articulate it that can be a touchstone for every area, and also the way in which we make the litmus test. There are a million choices, or a billion, infinite number of choices when you begin the process, but the moment that you make the first choice, the universe gets finite. And then with every additional choice, the range of choices gets smaller and smaller. So that by the end, there really is a right answer for what that prop looks like. There really is a right answer for where the lights should be. There really is a right answer for the tone of the moment, because we've made all these choices connected to a single big idea. And we've all moved together and amplified, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts when we get it right. And ultimately, my work then becomes invisible to everybody except me. That's when I get it right. When I mess it up, people are like, why the hell is the chair over there? Why is she talking to the wall? Why? When the audience is asking why, then I miss the moment in my work.
But do you think the invisibility is really the thing that you strive for? Only because I ask, reading reviews of your work, hearing people talk about your work, people admire you as a director.
Yes.
And it's not, people don't talk about Valerie Curtis Newton just with the chairs in one place. They talk about kind of holism of the vision. They talk about a depth of inquiry with a piece.
But I think, Brendan, I feel like that's partly it's partly that my age and the length of my career. I think that when I was getting started here, I don't think any of those things mattered. That I had this clarity of whatever. I don't think the light shone where I was, and now it does, and so people can see. I said this to you when we were talking my initial Genius interview, that I have definitely felt respected, but I don't know that I really have felt seen until probably the last 2 years or so. As a member of this community, I don't actually know that I felt seen. And now my work is resonating loudly and subtly at the same time.
Do you think that's a function of the community changing, of you changing?
I hope
Simply
it's
being
both.
here?
I hope it's both. I hope it's both. I hope that it's partly the reward for staying when lots of other people that I know have left. There was a period I couldn't get a job here. I couldn't pay someone to let me direct a play. And then that began to turn, and now I can work in my hometown, which is really lovely. I wish I worked more. Once a year is not really so much enough. So it's part of what my next chapter is taking more control about how often I work, producing more with the Hansberry Project, and returning to making work, which I did when I was much younger, and then stopped in this process of becoming a director and facilitating other people's work. So.
I wonder if we might open it up to the floor if anyone out there has any questions at all. There's one in the back there.
Hello, Valerie. Happy birthday. Congratulations on being here. You said something else at the Seattle Rep Forum that made an impression on me. You talked about how infrequently you are offered the opportunity to direct the play that isn't the black play in the season. I wonder, is that another conversation you don't want to keep having, or would you please comment on it?
So what I said, the statistic, this is the thing, I can tell facts and it problematizes, right? The statistic that I can share is that in 21 years here, only 5 times have I been asked to direct the non-black play. That would be the fact. Would I like to direct other work? Absolutely. Do I need to? No, I mean I'm making interesting stories, but it is interesting to me when I don't get that call. And I'm not sure that there's a conversation to be had. It's just it is what it is. I think the interesting thing about that fact is that the conversation tends to be, if we're going to do what people perceive to be non-traditional casting, even as it relates to directors, what we want to have the conversation about is, so does that mean that a white director can direct a black play? We want to set up a false equivalency about it. So then it shouldn't be that someone else directs Trouble in Mind, because now you're going to direct, pick a play. That somehow I want to direct more, I want to tell more stories. I think I don't suck, and I think that theaters would benefit from my presence. And then Odai.
Sure, I want to know how you know what you want to work on next. And do plays just sort of play them up for you, or do you sit with them for a long time?
On my website, there are like 15 plays that I would kill to direct tomorrow. And then the major thing is that I really do my best to stay in the network of writers and artists making things. And I have, I think, a reputation for being pretty good dramaturgically and helping people shape what it is they're working on. So I love big classic plays because I get to work with more people. Contemporary plays tend to be fewer people. But I like to do all kinds of things. And so I have ideas. I'm working on a generative project that I'm working on. I'm working with a couple of playwrights on pieces. And then there are these big behemoth, like I have to direct Childress's Wedding Band to complete the trifecta of the play. So some live with me forever, and some just go, you know what, oh damn, they just did XYZ play. I like that. I like that writer, or I love that topic, and even if the play is messy, I think we should have that conversation. Yeah. And Odai?
You took a absolutely stodgy mid-century chestnut of All My Sons and really made a brilliant and contemporary story out of that piece by setting it in Vladimir. Did you get blowback from that, from the theater community?
No, it actually happened more with audiences. The theater, Kate Warisky said to me, we want to do All My Sons, and I think it's a museum piece, and proved to me that it's not.
Right.
And I said, okay, how do we make this play appeal to as broad an audience as possible? Like, if I really wanted the Intiman to look more like Seattle than it normally does, what would I do to this play? And I said, oh, let's set it in the Central District in 1947 and make this family a black family, and let's talk about what it is to be American, to have to choose between being a good race man and being an American. And I think that it will still resonate with the white audience, and that other people will also come to hear it. And so Kate was really great about just do the thing. But the response that the theater got from our liberal, progressive Seattle audience was, you know, why did you have to make it about race? And Miller didn't write it that way, and so the audience felt like, going back to the earlier point I made, like they lost something. Like I stole something from them. And so I got accused of being racist and bigoted and prejudiced and hating white people and never wanting to work with white people, and why would I, you know, there was a writer in town that said, how can you talk to me about wanting to direct other plays when you could have done All My Sons with an all-white cast, and you chose not to, so obviously you don't really want to make plays that work with white artists in town. Yeah, it was all that. It was all that. And all I did was say, how can I make this play work with the broadest audience possible? And I actually, once I made the decision to set it there, I actually non-traditionally cast 2 white roles in that production. It was not an all-black production of All My Sons, and it was not a colorblind cast production of All My Sons. It was strategically chosen, those roles, to amplify and resonate the themes that Miller was talking about. We didn't try to do anything that he wasn't trying to do. We just decided that a contemporary audience would hear it differently if it came out of the mouths of black people, and they did.
And it made the all bigger.
I don't know a lot of directors in Seattle who avoid choosing villains and heroes in their narratives without flattening or over sentimentalizing certain characters' humanity to prove a point, whether it be political or whatever it is. And the 2 things I've seen you do, it seemed like you were allergic to that sort of easy choice. Why? Or am I right? Is that true? And also, how? With something so strong to say, I'm thinking specifically of Tim Gallen's character in
Yes.
Trouble in Mind, who I thought was given by you and Playwright. Such a strong voice in a world where that could have been flat.
I think in the conversation that I had with Tim as we were working on it, but his liberal sensibilities were like, I hate this guy. And I said to him, you know what? I need this guy every day. There are people who believe with all their hearts that they are doing the right thing, and they're not. That the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so what if this guy really believes that the thing that he is doing is for the greater good? What if he's committed to that? And then, if there's a moment, if you decide that there's a moment when he discovers the truth, that in fact he's part of the problem, then our hearts will break with him. Right? You can't let us hate him. We can be embarrassed by him. We can be concerned for him, but we can't hate him. And if we do, then the obstacle that the Black characters are facing is false. And it reads as false, and it lets an audience go, oh, it's not like that anymore. And then I said, I told him a story about something that had happened to me not long before we began work. And he's like, got it. And then he decided that he could love this character. And in his love for him and his desire to talk about his flaw, Tim went to places that I'm really grateful to have witnessed in him as an actor, and I think he found new territory for himself as a performer as a result of going that direction. I don't believe there are villains. I don't believe the most vile, virulent form of racism. I think that there is something underneath there. This question about looking for the fear, I look at that and I think, why must they do that? What is it that they're terrified of? And then we try to go at that and to reflect that in the work. That it's not a pathological, that it's learned, and that it's understandable. Not necessarily acceptable, but understandable.
Time for one more? No? I'm so sorry. But I'm going to talk about your videos. Keeping with tradition, I'm going to stand over here for this part now. In introducing our next group of artists. There are actually a lot of them in the room here tonight. We're only going to have two up here on stage. That is the Satori group. They're a group of theater artists who are from colleges east of the Mississippi, let's say. And they got together. It's kind of a long origin story, but essentially they set out little pods to do some reconnaissance across the country to find the right theater town for them. And they chose Seattle, which is very good for our egos, makes us feel exciting, like we could be a home for new young artists, and that would be great. But I wonder if they still feel like that was a good choice, or they chose and we can talk about that later. But they showed up in the spring of 2009. They did their first show in Seattle, full-length production. It was a production of the Will Eno's Tragedy, A Tragedy, which I've spoken with members before saying, is that your most conservative production ever? And they were like, yeah, well, because it was a fully formed script, and it had been done before we ever did it. So if your most conservative production as a theater company is a Will Eno play, that really says something good about you. They went on to do an adaptation of George Saunders' short story, Winky, Neil Ferrand's play, Fabulous Prizes, Martina Mayok's Rewilding, Spike Friedman's Returning to Albert Joseph most recently, and they really rocked the Seattle theater scene, sort of back on their heels. They were interested in broken narrative, sometimes broken sets, and a depth and commitment in the performances and in the process that they put into developing the work that you could just feel and smell emanating off the stage, even in sometimes the first moments of the production, have really made a mark and have raised the bar, I think, for Seattle theater artists in general. So we're going to watch a few minutes of video clips from productions of theirs in the past few years, and then we'll talk to 2 members of the Satori group. Thanks.
I know it's here, I'm just asking, do you see it? 9 o'clock. You could just fucking say, look left, man.
Hold this.
But at least let the evaluators look at it, Mina.
Yeah,
It's protocol.
you should really
You
let
have to.
them see it. Fine.
What the? Holy shit! Who are these people? There are people out there?
Hi. This is evaluation number 600,315. Presentation to begin now. It's a trumpet. Evaluation to begin now. Thank you. Evaluation number 600,315 completed. Artifact denied.
Wait, that trumpet belonged to Freddie Hubbard.
I'm looking for a specific person and I can't find it. But this person invited me. I'm not the sort who... I'm Leo. It's pleasant to meet you. Did you know when introduced people respond with their own name? This place feels familiar to me. It must have been a regional operations center. Transit operations. You can tell by some of the variations on the standard architecture that remain. Look at these partitions. This must have been a seaport. There must have been a port here. Do you know about the port?
No.
Did you know what I told you about names? I feel like I've offended you. That was unintended. Let me attempt to engage with you in a lighter dialogue. Why are you here? Are you a regular at places such as this one? Are there regulars? You're a regular. Yes. It is strange that anyone is here. That can't be permitted. This isn't permitted. Oh. This is no longer light. I should stop talking.
Yes. If you left, I'd murder you.
No, you wouldn't.
No. I wouldn't.
Gloria. If you left, I'd cry.
I'd murder you.
It stands on its own. Nothing around but the sky. Take me there. Take me back home. Home to sleep when I die. Build me a fire. Dress me in white. Lay gold coins on my eyes. Light the fire. Say your goodbyes. Send me back to the sky.
That's swag.
So this is Spike.
Hello.
And Claire. Maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about yourselves and what you do with the company.
I've been a company member since the company was founded back in 2007. I performed in a number of the shows, led a couple of the generative processes, and also written for the company.
I am also a founding member, and I am a designer. I've also been in administrative support all the way through. I've served on a number of roles, including company manager, finance manager, accountant, and now I'm more just support for our general manager, Doreen, who's based in Chicago.
So there's some interesting, mysterious question mark around what the Satori process is in developing a show. I remember talking to the playwright Farron at one point, and he was talking about when the company had decided to do this play, Fabulous Prizes, and the way that this idea was introduced to him, I think was at a party with a company member saying something along the lines of, yeah, we want to do your play, but we want to fuck it up and do a bunch of Satori shit to it. So my question would be, what is this Satori shit?
I think we trade in intimacy and consideration for every aspect of the work. Like we came up in 2007. We were young. We decided from Seattle. We were maybe kind of stupid, and we also we didn't have a lot of resources, and we didn't really see a future. I think, given the context of the world at the time, when we were going to have a lot of resources. So we decided that we would own audience experience for everything we do. We would take everything into consideration on everything we made. And so even with a play that was written like Fabulous Prizes, we're going to treat this like you are starting out. We're going to bring our whole vocabulary top to bottom to this work.
And I would say that extends to how design focuses in or features in our process, and not so much that we have designers present in all of our workshops, but we spent a lot of time in our early history training all of the actors in our company on how to talk about design with designers and creating a common vocabulary among ourselves so that when we do talk about audience experience, we are speaking from a common place and that's a through line through all of our productions instead of it being just focused from one production to the next.
Well, it does seem like in watching your productions, and I didn't mention the introduction, they've done productions for one audience member at a time, the microdramas, we saw a little piece of there. It does feel oftentimes when one is sitting in the audience that the company has thought about what is each individual person sitting in that audience going to smell, see, hear, feel, as opposed to we put this show together up on the stage and then those people are out there and we hope they have a good time, but that there's a much more intimate relationship that you all imagine that you as artists, as writers, not just the actors, writers, directors, designers, are having with the people who aren't out there, but in a sense are kind of right here. I mean, you often put audience members right onto the stage.
Yeah, I think that's the part we like too. Like, what is going to get me to leave my house and really engage fully with my body and someone else's body? It can be a great story. I don't want to be like, there is no story that will bring me out of my house, but like, I have way too many great stories beamed in to my house every day. And especially since we were so young when we started, and our skill set was where it was. Like, what can we provide people that's going to pay them off for coming to one of our shows? And the answer was everything. Like, we're going to give everything we can, dump it all into every production we make.
And I would even say that we also have a gift of often working in our own space. That started with Winky in 2011 when we took over a lease that we just kind of ended up with the space, and so we were able to do workshops and like really build our entire process into the space that the performance would be done.
It's very interesting to hear a playwright say he's not sure whether or not those stories are enough to bring people out of their homes. I think it says something about the company. Playwright's the guy saying, I don't know if stories going to get you out of the house. There has to be something else going on. A lot of your work over the years seems to be kind of meditation on catastrophe. Some of the work's small scale, like personal, like Winky, Fabulous Prizes, but then pieces like Rewilding, Albert Joseph, seem to be concerned with catastrophe on an economic, ecological, large cultural scale, political scale. I'm wondering if that's something that you're doing on purpose, or if that's just something that's spilling out into the work.
I think it is on purpose. I think you asked if we are still happy that we came to Seattle, and I think the answer is absolutely yes. But I think that there's, again, the 20-year-old version of seeing Seattle, and then a slightly older version of that, which is to say that from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, this is a great artistic community, and it is. And oh, there are all these people that are doing an interesting work, and there are, but there's also moments where you can feel like some of the art is like exists in an ancillary fashion to like an engineering mechanism that is like this city, that is what drives this economy. And if we're going to call things into question, which I totally agree with Howard, it's absolutely our work, what are the big questions that are facing us directly? What are the big questions that are facing our community directly? And I think a lot of it has to do with apportionment of wealth. And I think a lot of it has to do with ignoring catastrophe. And so I think when we think about what questions we want to ask, those come to the surface a lot.
I would also say that we like human relationships and human interactions, and when you put that in a context of a catastrophic event, you are dealing with people, and you're not, there's like an edifice that breaks away in how people interact on stage and how people interact with the world, that they're in a production.
Do you still think you'd say it was a good idea to come to Seattle like 3 drinks later when we're 3 hours? The same answer to that question.
I would, yeah. I've got a lot of the people who made that choice sitting right there. So I don't necessarily want to speak for everybody, but I think it absolutely has been. It's given, the broader community has given everybody a chance to do other work, which is great, and engage with a big community, whether that's Washington Ensemble Theater, NCTC, or the bigger houses where a couple of our members are currently in Angels and work with Val and Triple Mind. But also, it is still accessible space in a way that it just wouldn't have been in New York. And the art is still the focus here in a way that it isn't necessarily in Los Angeles, where a lot of actors are using theater as a showcase. And so in some ways, picking the happy medium answer is like something that's like a little bit tingles in my brain, but absolutely it's been so valuable for all of us, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, when we made the choice, it was, we all wanted to have a common ground and not have one person have a leg up over another person was actually super important to us. And I think if we went back and made the choice, we would make the same choice. And I think we'd still probably make the same choice today, too, in a lot of ways.
Mean one leg up over another person in the sense of like, oh, this is my hometown, so I already have connections with directors, so my solo career is going to go faster.
Yeah, because so before we came to Seattle, we did 3 productions in Cincinnati where some of us had gone to college, and we entertained the question of sticking around in Cincinnati instead of moving. And
We chose Seattle. I don't regret that aspect of it.
You said it, but you did a little bit. You all been here for 5 years now, and I wonder if there are times when the discussion veers towards, well, do we want to become a mid-sized institution? Do we want to grow in that direction? Or not? Or we're just taking it play to play, man, we'll see what happens.
It's slightly more to play the play, but I know we speak a lot about not wanting to become an institution. That we're a company that's about the work that we're making and the group of artists that are making it at any given time. And I think that is what's kept so many of us original members in the company for as long as we have been. I would say that, in fact, this is silly, but we just made ourselves a 501c3 and basically put a kill switch in there, where if we are becoming an institution, we can just nuke the whole thing. I think that exists. Yeah, this is great for fundraising.
What does the kill switch look like? If you have too much money, then
I think it's more that the company has the right to destroy the company at any given time. That's that was something that was weirdly important to us. And
that the artistic company and not the board.
Yeah.
That the artistic company has that power.
I think I want to open it up to questions at this point. Somebody has some. Are there some? If not, we can just keep riffing up here. That's cool. Yeah.
I just have a basic question. How many of you are there in this story group, and what is the process? How do you, as new people, as you change over time, how does that work?
We just actually introduced or accepted 3 new company members, so we're a total of 11 company members. There's 7 founding members who are part of the core company. We have 8 associate artists, and we have 3 founding members that are part of the associate artists. And then we work with a group of guest artists that are growing. We started as a group of 12, and we've only had one person leave completely.
I'm curious how many projects you have in the pipeline at any one time, because each one feels like it's been very well cared for, but I don't know if you have a lot and then one kind of breaks out of the pack and you focus on that, and then you go back and evaluate what you've had sort of cooking before, or you just take one.
I think that thing has evolved. I think for a while we were making 3-4 shows a year because that's what we felt theater companies do, and then we were like putting a lot into each one and realizing that we were giving each one short shrift in a certain way. So we started taking like a year or so to make something. And then what we're learning now is that we have like the luxury of being able to edit our entire production, as it were, because we kind of own it top to bottom. And so we have, I think, 2 new things in variation stages right now. We have a couple recurring events that we're bringing back regularly, Spook House, microdramas, things that are for one audience member at a time. And then for productions like Albert Joseph and Land Is Always Known, which we relatively fully produce, those are things that are still live for us. We still think of those as text that can be fully revised, but when I say text, I mean the whole production is that text.
Any other questions in the moment? Oh, yes.
Are there companies or artists that influenced you or that sort of spurred you to do what you do, or were you sort of making it up from the ground up?
We look to a lot of companies that as like touchstones, maybe is the right word. We've worked with Pig Iron. We've brought them out and have trained with them and look at how they do things. We look at the Max in Austin, Elevator Repair Service, the team, City Company in terms of like early training. A bunch of us did their city summer camp and trained with Suzuki and how designers work in their training room. We've looked at that.
I would say locally we see kinship in Washington Ensemble and NCTC in particular. I personally have a lot of respect for St. and that whole group in terms of being other companies that are willing to take really big risks on brand new material and then own it top to bottom in terms of the experience they're going out. And those are all small companies who are doing it and fighting with limited resources. So that's it.
There's one back there.
My question is similar.
Oh, your question was similar?
The way that you all have, it seems like you're developing projects top to bottom, owning every element of the experience, and really experimenting with pushing narrative, with pushing design. It seems like in that sense you have to, in a way, be constantly courting failure. And I wonder if there are really big sort of bottoming out moments that have been really instructive for you and might be instructive for others.
I mean, what comes to mind was some of the scenic elements around Mickey and that process.
Yeah, I think it was ambition, and it was also.
Can you give us an idea what didn't work? For those of us.
I would say. Oh man, it's like damage and block in my head right now when I think about it. What didn't work is we didn't give ourselves the chance to do the amount of work it would take. I think it's precocity, but like, graciousness, one of those is work. We approached a short story, we're like, we're going to adapt this, we're going to make this happen, and we're going to do it in 4 months, as if it were a traditional rehearsal process, but we were generating the script top to bottom, and we were bringing in an outside scenic designer and asking for 5 separate sets for 5 different acts of the play.
That took place in one room that was about this size.
Yeah.
This was moving around.
Yeah.
Between each act.
And so we ended up throwing 120 man hours at it a week for each company member just to like build the apparatus. That's not, it sounds, the face that you just made is the face that I was feeling the entire process. And I was like writing the show also. It was bananas. And that could have burned us out, and I think it is why we slowed down. We've hit different paces at different times, but I think that like the big lesson we learned is that both that we have an internal vocabulary that comes from all training together in terms of both design, but also like designers and writers, we train with our actors, we do all that work together. So we have a shared vocabulary, but being able to bring that to other artists is something that we've gotten better at in terms of collaborating, and also being realistic with ourselves in terms of how long it takes to make a thing to our standards. And then also, there's a lot of pride in showing that show, in spite of the fact that it almost, killed us in some ways. Like, there's a lot of pride in that, and I know, the actual experience of the show, I don't think is a total. I don't think it feels to other people the way it might to us.
I think we have time for one more question, if there is one more. And if not, thank you to joining us. Thank you. So for our final segment of the evening, I would like to introduce Jarek Hoffer. He's an artist whose name you might have heard before, aka Jinx Monsoon. Jarek has studied ballet, he's busked on the street, he's done stand-up, he's done improv. He put it himself through Cornish College of the Arts by working as a janitor at the school. He's performed theater, he's performed drag, he's performed war theater, and then recently won RuPaul's Drag Race on national television, which has changed the arc of his career somewhat, or at least accelerated it. We can talk more about that in a little bit. But first, I'd like you to meet Jarek Hoffer.
So I think the first thing I have to say right away is that you guys are a very different audience than what I'm used to. If I'm not in a play, I'm normally doing a cabaret show or making a guest appearance in a drag show, and it's normally, wall-to-wall drunk homosexuals. I'm sure there's some of those out there too. But I know that the majority is probably not like that tonight. So. And I wanted to think of a way to kind of get your energy going, as if you were a drunk homosexual. But it's a little more studious of a crowd than I'm used to, is all I'm trying to say. So I'm a drag queen, but I like to think of myself as a G. No, I'm joking. I like to think of myself as a drag performance artist, or a gender performance artist. You know that a drag queen is a man who dresses up as a woman, and what I try to do is deepen that past just, what am I doing dressed as a woman? Why am I dressed as a woman? What am I exaggerating, and what am I trying to convey to people? And I think of drag queens kind of like in Fahrenheit 451, that's the name of that book, right? Okay. They memorize a book, and then it's their job to tell that book to other people so that that book can survive. I think drag queens do that with icons. I think we keep certain styles and aesthetics, and we keep certain things alive for the next generation, And we see it with older drag queens keeping Cher and Bette Midler, and even older than that, Marlene Dietrich, Peggy Lee, all these icons throughout the years. It's our job to make sure that people remember them because they had a huge impact on us and they had a huge impact on the world. So I have very obscure tastes in icons, I don't like doing Cher because I feel like I sound more like a basset hound. When I try to do Cher, it always goes, do you believe in love? I like more obscure people. I was really obsessed with Little Edie from Grey Gardens. I've been really obsessed with people like Marlene Dietrich and just more obscure people that not as many people have heard of. And one of my biggest gay icons since I was a little kid. You're not going to think this person's a gay icon, but I will explain it to you. Her name's Joan Cusack, and I always get that response when I say her name. It's always like, You didn't know who I was going to say, but you thought it was going to be pretty good, but you did not expect Joan Cusack. Now, she was in a movie called Addams Family Values, and it's one of the most amazing movies I've ever seen. And to encapsulate what I'm talking about with this keeping an icon alive, when I saw that movie, I fell in love with the speech she delivers at the end. It's the most self-absorbed, narcissistic speech, explaining her reasoning behind being a serial killer, very matter-of-factly, like, this is why I kill people. And I thought it would be amazing set to gospel music. This is an album, this is a song from my new album called The Inevitable Album. It's called What About Debbie? I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't enjoy hurting anybody. I don't like guns or bombs or electric chairs. But sometimes people just won't listen. And so I have to use persuasion and slides. Or were they? All I ever wanted was a ballerina Barbie and her pretty pink tutu. My birthday, I was 10, and you know what they got me? Malibu Barbie! That's not who I wanted. That's not who I was. I was a ballerina. Graceful, delicate, they had to go. What about Debbie? What about me? They're the ones who killed my childhood. I get the 3rd degree. I've always said that moment's war as far as I can see. So what about Debbie? What about my first husband, the heart surgeon, all day long. Coronaries, transplants. Sorry about dinner, Deb. The Pope has a cold. Husband too. The senator, he loved his state. He loved his country. Sorry, Debbie, no Mercedes this year. We have to set an example. Oh yeah, set this. What about Debbie? What about me? The car he had was fine until it pinned to a tree. We all deserve a little respect and courtesy. So what about Debbie? What about me? You took me in, you accepted me, but did any of you love me? I mean, really love me. So I killed. So I maimed. So I destroyed one innocent life after another. Aren't I a human being? Don't I burn and ache and shock? Don't I deserve love and jewelry? Don't forget Debbie. Don't forget me. I sure hope you enjoyed our little chat. My last face you'll see. And we're burning with the rest of them. I guess I'm the only one who knows the answer to that question. I flew here from Provincetown on Sunday, yeah.
Where you're doing the show, The Vaudevillians.
Yes.
Which is almost through its
I have 3 more shows when I go back tonight.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
I'm curious whether the interviews with press out in Provincetown are starting to shift away from the RuPaul talk and to talk more about what you do outside of the RuPaul world.
Well, the biggest thing that I can say is that I went on RuPaul's Drag Race because I felt like I had decided, I just felt the universe saying, you have a real potential to make your career this. And if you go on this show, you have the potential to do it right now, you know? And so I went on reality TV, which is something I kind of poured over, not something I really was excited about. I'm not a huge reality TV fan, but going on the show was exceptional, and the experience that I got from it was wonderful, and coming out of it, I have managed to take the opportunity, like the big, you know, when you can strike when the iron's hot, the show gave me this ability to build an audience and then introduce them to what I really do and what I do beyond what they saw on the television show. And then now I have a fan base that appreciates what I've been doing for years and understands that more about me than what they saw for, you know, a couple months on the TV show.
And it seems like The Vaudevillians is a great show to use as a segue for people who are not introduced to you via Jinx.
Well, they come
but
in...
into all this other stuff that you do as well.
They come into my shows, I think, expecting your standard drag queen show, where it's a drag queen singing her standards or doing her, you know, material for however much time she can do it. You know, they can go on for hours. But I think they come in thinking they're going to see something they've already seen before, and they don't realize that what they're going to see instead is a theater piece that I created years before Drag Race. And that's really exciting for me. Like, they come in to see someone who was on TV and leave realizing, oh, I think I just saw myself in my first theater piece, you know? And I love that, you know?
That's great. You mentioned the term gender performance artist as you were giving the introduction up here, and you've talked a little bit in some conversations we've had about the political dimensions of your work. I mean, critics and academics have talked about drag and queer and gender boundaries and such for a while, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say about your own work and how it fits into that politicized context.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that I can remember in college, I went to an amazing school. I went to Cornish College, and there's alumni right there. I'm so excited to see. I remember a teacher who, I love this teacher, but he said something to me that really lit a fire in me. And because I went to school knowing I wanted to be an actor, but I also knew deep down inside that the female roles are the ones that I like better. Well, I mean, I love a lot of male roles too, but I tend to find myself more drawn to these female roles, and I can relate to them more, and I feel like, given the chance, I could bring something really magical to that role. And I said this to one of my teachers because he wouldn't let me read as Queen Gertrude in Hamlet. He wouldn't let me read as Queen Gertrude. And he said it was a rule in his class that girls could read as boys, but boys couldn't read as girls. So then after the class, I talked to him, and he said, it's because I don't believe that our society is at a point where a man could play a female role and have it not be comical. That it's fine for men to play female roles if they want to be, you know, making a commentary on something, or if it's satirical, but they don't ever play them earnestly and honestly and like a real human woman. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I want to do. And so it kind of like started this vendetta years ago with no one else but myself, other than that I just believe that if you're right for the role, you're right for the role, and it doesn't matter who you are, or where you came from, or what you have between your legs. And I know I'm going to make an amazing Mrs. Lovett someday, and it's not going to be me like, oh look, I'm a woman, everybody, are you shocked? You know, like, it's going to be me living my fantasy on stage as Mrs. Lovett. You know, I don't want drag to be thought of as something that's only novelty. I want it to have the same respect and affect people the same way any other art form can.
Well, in preparing for this, I was thinking back on the various roles that you've played over the years and wondering if it feels very different to you in terms of the preparation for the character, but also in terms of your relationship with the audience, whether you're playing a male role, or whether you're playing a female role, or whether you're doing what is traditionally known as a drag piece for a drag kind of audience, and what the sort of different inroads for you into those performances are, and what they feel like when you're doing it. Maybe they don't feel different at all.
I don't think I've ever felt different playing a female. My joke is that, you know, since I graduated, all I've played is young boys and women, and that's pretty much true, you know? But I almost love having a type. I almost love being a character actor that has a type, because I know when a role is right for me. I go into that door, through that door into that room, and I know that this is my role, and they don't come all the time. Like, I don't audition for everything, and I'll go, you know, after school, I went spans of months without being in a theater piece and only working in drag, because I wait until the role comes that I know I was meant to play, and then I go in there and I get that role. And it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. And yeah, so I always start with how am I like this person and how am I not like this person. But gender's never really been a question. It's never been what I, you know, compare myself to that person with, you know, because I've always walked both lines. Like, I've always felt very feminine and masculine in different points in my life, and I think everyone does. Like, I don't think I'm this, you know, anomaly that I realize I have both genders inside of me. I think that's something, once we realize, you know, once we're comfortable saying that to ourselves, we all really do. And I think the biggest message I want to convey in my work is, or even if it's not something that hits you on the head, but it's something you realize down the road because you saw something I worked on, is that gender is not something we're born with. It's something that is pushed on to us. We're born with genitalia, but gender is dictated to us, and gender is something that we're told that because of our genitalia, we have to act this way or that way, and that it's right to act this way and wrong to act that way. And I think the more and more we can destroy that idea, the further our society can go in so many different directions.
So you don't have a secret role that you're dying to play that would provoke in the audience the, like, Joan Cusack reaction? Oh my God, I never saw that coming.
Well, I've always wanted to play, Mrs. Lovett is like my dream role. And I don't know what role would shock people or like would get that Joan Cusack-y reaction. I've always thought that the book Disco Bloodbath or the movie Party Monster, they're the same entity. I always thought that would be an amazing musical, and I think I should play every character. No,
I can see the solo show.
I really can see myself playing either Michael Alec or James St. James. I just won't be as cute as Macaulay Culkin does, but anyway.
What was I going to ask you next? Oh, it seems that people now are talking a lot about a kind of sweet spot drag moment for Seattle. And I'm wondering, A, if you think that's the case, or if that's just kind of a temporary delusion. And B, if it is the case, one of the going theories is that Seattle is cosmopolitan enough and has enough of a density of an arts community to allow that kind of thing to flourish, but it's far enough away from the real centers of the universe that people can experiment with their own little things without being smacked down immediately and being told, no, that's not allowed.
Exactly.
And whether you think that's true, and I'm curious to hear you travel and perform in all these different cities, how that compares to other cities.
Well, I'll say, because I've traveled and performed, and when I'm doing solo work, it's generally that you know, my work ranges from doing my full-length cabaret shows for a paying audience in a space like this, or sometimes I'm the guest star at a drag show in a gay bar, and it's like, you know, there's like 15 local drag queens, and I'm at the very end of the show, and it's just non-stop partying. And so my work ranges from very like theatery to very divey, and I treat it all the same. But drag is very regional. Like, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and it has a thriving drag community, but it's based in different things. Like, it focuses and glorifies different things. And the community is very homogenous in the way that it's centered towards pageants and what I call like old school country fried drag. You know, it's like, when you think of drag, it's like Priscilla Queen of the Desert, it's Tu Wong Fu, you know. And then I came to Seattle, and what I saw was what I had always wanted to do, which is drag queens behaving more like actresses than like models. And when I came to Seattle and saw Jackie Hell and Dina Martina, and Ben de la Creme was a huge, huge influence on me. I just saw them doing the kind of things I always wanted to do, because no one had told them, oh, that's not how drag is done. And just seeing these people like create these living characters, you know, that are so insane, but have a whole, they sell out their shows, you know? And so if drag is very regional, which I believe it is, Seattle's the right region to be an experimental gender performance artist.
And Seattle a one-city region in that sense? I mean, you have Jackie Hell, Faubank, Dina Martina, yourself. It seems like there's a tradition of that here, but can you see that kind of tradition elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I see it in New York, but the competition is so much higher that no one takes the same risks here. Like, you have the ability to take a risk here because you're not going to go bankrupt taking a week off of work to do this show this week. But in New York, I mean, it used to be that my dream was to move to New York, and I worked for 4 months there last summer, and it is not my dream. I mean, like, I love working in New York because it's like everything I thought I always wanted, but I love living in Seattle and coming home to Seattle because I haven't seen what Seattle does. I've seen it in weird places in Australia, and I've seen it in weird, like, underground clubs in Amsterdam. But, like, in America, there's, like, Seattle, and then there's a lot of places that are catching up to Seattle. Like, there's a lot of places. And in Drag Race, in an amazing way, has given the opportunity for everyone to see what goes into this art form. And that it's not just getting into the opposite gender's apparel. That it's a whole, I mean, it's everything. It's like every drag queen who's doing her stuff right is a trained actress. Even if she can only play one role. If she can only play that one role, she doesn't realize it maybe, but she's a damn good actress because so much character development and generation and so much of yourself and so much of, you know, what you've got going on inside of you can go into your drag character and be a place to put all of that stuff.
I think we should open it up to questions if there are any general in the audience.
Jarek, where's your crown?
Oh, it is on display right now at a museum in Tacoma, I believe. For some reason, I thought you were like the museum curator or something, grilling me. So it's on display. It's in an exhibit right now for people of influence who came out of Seattle. So it's like next to Macklemore's fur coat. There's the dress that I wore. And I gotta say, you know, it's weird because I was born and raised in Portland. I used to think that I was going to go right back there after school, and then what happened is Cornish introduced me to what Seattle has to offer, and it became my immediate decision to stay here and work here. And I've always been able to support myself as an actor or a drag queen with maybe just like one part-time job here and there. And I know I couldn't have done it in Portland like that. I know I would have been working a 9-to-5 and doing drag as a hobby. But here I made drag my career, and I made theater my career. So then to see the city that I moved to and decided to make my home, then back me up the way they did this year. Like, I thought I was just the weirdest person in the whole wide world, and I thought I was going to go on TV and everyone was going to see that I'm clinically insane. And what happened instead is my city that I live in, someone sent me a video, and it was just it freaked me out in the most amazing way, but they were playing the episode that I won live at Julia's on Broadway, and the party poured into the street, and it was like when Obama won. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, the night I won Drag Race was pretty much the same as when Obama won. I'm definitely not trying to say that. But the fact that my city could care that much about it and could be that excited for me to do that and to showcase Seattle in that way, I just felt so honored that I chose the right place to live,
I think the sense was that you were really representing something about the essence of the city, about the theater community, about a whole sense of the city that doesn't get out to the public eye that much, and people love you, treat you well as well.
I think you're way cuter than Macaulay.
That was a statement, not a question. Sorry. Yes, please.
There's obviously there's an AKA out there. There's Jarek and then there's Jinx. I'm sure you've been asked before.
Yeah.
You say you're used to an audience that are like drunken homosexuals and that right now. But where do you want to take the audience? Obviously, your art is when you did Hedwig, it was Jarek. It wasn't Jinx. But when people go, they want to see Jinx. How do you differentiate the two, and what do you want to take forward?
What I found with the Vaudevillians, so the Vaudevillians is a show that I created about 3 years before I went on Drag Race. And so I've been performing it with my music partner for about 5 years now. And it's an original character separate from Jinx Monsoon. And so lots of times when we have our shows, people come in wanting to see Jinx Monsoon, and like at first the place in New York, they just wanted me to do a one-woman show and do your songbook. And I kept saying, no, we got to do the Vaudevillians. And they're like, people don't want to see you play a new character. I was like, well, when they come in and see how good this character is, they're not going to care about the other character. They're going to realize it's me because they have common sense, and they're going to fall in love with a new character. And I find opportunity arises if there's a place where it happens organically and genuinely, that I can do a little wink or a nod to what people know about me coming into this experience, then I will. Like there's places in every show that I'm in where I can make some kind of wink to the audience, like, remember when I was on TV, So if I can do it, and if it makes that moment sing it a new way, or if it makes that moment, gives it what it was missing, then I'll do it. But I only do it then. I played Velma Von Tussle in the 10th anniversary of Hairspray here at the Fifth Avenue Theater pretty soon after I had won. And it was one of the most amazing experiences for me because I stepped off of this TV show and then immediately was given one of my dream roles in theater. And it said to me, like, I can still be an actor, even though everyone wants me or knows me as this drag queen. I can still come on as a character in a show, and people will sit and watch that. Like they don't need Jinx present to be happy, and I'm glad because she's insane. But
any others? Please.
Do you prefer performing as a character that you created or one that you've seen 1,000 times that you get to put your own sort of self into?
I think I love performing the latter, a character that's been seen 100 times, because I love finding something that no one has found before. But I also love, like, Hedwig was an amazing challenge because there's the movie version, there's the people who saw John Cameron Mitchell when he originated the role, there was Nick Garrison here in Seattle doing the role. It was like, the second you say you're doing Hedwig and the Egg Ranch, everyone knows what Hedwig is supposed to be and what she's supposed to look like. And they have 3 really good references if you live in Seattle to draw from. And so the trick with something like that is you can't ignore the iconicism of the role. You can't like say, I'm just going to pretend none of that ever happened before and create it anew, which is lovely and wonderful, but if you ignore what's iconic about that role, if you ignore why people fell in love with that role, then you risk losing that love with your audience. You know, you have to give them enough of what they came to see to keep them hooked. And then once they're hooked, you turn the corner and you show them this whole new part of that character that they never thought they were going to see. That's when I feel like I've done a good job with the role.
Might have time for one more, if there is one more. And if not, I encourage you all to come join us at Vito's for some cocktails. Let's have a hand for Jared Moffat. Thank you very much.